Hello and welcome to part 2 of my Google Max Performance Campaign overview. If you missed part 1, in that video, I go over all the details of what a Google Performance Max campaign is, who it's for, who it's not, pros and cons, and all that good stuff. So if you missed that video, I do encourage you to watch that one before consuming this one. So you can go ahead and check that one out right here. In this video, we're just gonna get straight into it. We're going to build a Performance Max campaign from beginning to end. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in. All right, so you're gonna be inside of your Google campaign and you wanna click on this plus sign in order to create a new campaign. I'm gonna select the new campaign right here. And then for this one, we're going to do sales. If you recall, if you did your homework when watching that first video, I did say if you're doing a PMax campaign, I recommend doing it for sales. I do not recommend doing it for anything else here. So definitely we are going to stick to sales. Ideally, probably in most scenarios, I wouldn't be optimizing for all of these conversion events together. But a lot of times these are on a case-by-case basis. So just to keep things simple, I'll go ahead and click continue on all these. But traditionally, I would maybe only optimize for purchases and begin checkout or something like that. But I'll click continue right here. And so then here we have our options, right? So Performance Max, shopping, demand gen, search, display, video. We are going to go with Performance Max right there. Okay, so then we select the Merchant Center account that we want to be associated. Obviously, if you have multiple Merchant Center accounts, just make sure that the correct one is being selected right there. And I'm just going to label this as test PMax because I'm not actually going to publish this. Sorry, I cannot spell them right now. There we go, PMax. Go ahead and continue, but obviously in your case, you want to give it some kind of name that you will remember. All right, so what do you want to optimize for? Conversion value or conversions? If you have an account where there's already plenty of history, sales history, conversion history, all that kinds of stuff, you probably can start with conversion value and you set a target ROAS goal. So we can go ahead and click on this right here. Let's say I want to get a target ROAS of 300%. I'm not saying that is what you should be targeting. It's going to be on a case-by-case basis, depending on the business, the industry, your profit margins, all that kind of stuff. My ultimate point here is that you can potentially start with this if you already have a lot of account history in there, again, with sales and conversions, stuff like that. If you don't, then I do not recommend going with that because then the algorithm is kind of flying blind and it's going to have a lot of difficulty optimizing for a conversion value. So in your case, if you are basically starting from scratch, you want to choose conversions. You can set a target cost per acquisition at the beginning if you like. I do like to leave this open at least at first when it comes to the very first campaign in a new account with very little to no history or anything like that. Simply because I don't want to constrain the algorithm, right? I want it to give it all the freedom and flexibility that it wants to go out and do its thing. And then once I start seeing some initial results, I can start giving it some limitations. So like I said, ideally, I would actually leave this blank. But again, based upon your business, your goals, your margins, maybe you could potentially start off with this. So maybe you want to target CPA of $60. Again, that's 100% dependent on what it is that you're selling, how affluent your target audience is, all that kind of stuff. But I am just going to go ahead and leave that blank for now. It does say right here, bid more efficiently with maximized conversion value, target ROAS. That's what I just spoke about. And so you are going to get these warnings from Google asking you to switch your settings to what they recommend. And again, I'm not saying maximize conversion value is bad. As a matter of fact, I think that is the best way to go eventually when you can get there. But again, if you have a new account, not a whole lot of conversion data, that goal right there is not going to work super well for you. So I would just avoid it for the time being. And then you can select this right here, customer acquisition. Adjust your bidding to help acquire new customers. By default, your campaign bids equally for new and existing customers. However, you can configure your customer acquisition settings to optimize for acquiring new customers. So obviously this is dependent on what it is that you sell, right? So if you are selling makeup or any kind of facial products or anything like that, skincare, then you don't want to click this, right? Because that means you're going to have repeat customers, or hopefully you have repeat customers. Someone buys once and then they keep coming back for more and more and more. Then you don't want to select this. You want to bid equally for both new and existing customers. However, if you're more in that one-time purchase category, let's say you're selling automobiles, right? You're a car dealership, then yeah, I mean, people aren't going to be buying, new cars. Not too many people, at least, are going to be buying new cars all that frequently. So then it would make sense for you to select this right here, and then you can go through the prompts in terms of, what the bid levels make sense for you and your business. But I would say in most cases, for most businesses running the sales campaign, you can probably leave this blank. But again, as many of these things are, it is on a case-by-case basis. So just evaluate that for you and your business. So I'll go ahead and click on next. We'll just go with, it wants me to confirm that it's me. Give me 1 second here. All right, there we go. Now I can go ahead and select my countries. I'll just do United States in this example right here. Yes, I do want to target English. No, I am not running political ads in the EU, and then I don't plan to use this account for EU political ads, so I can go ahead and click on that right there. Then I'll click on more settings right here, ad schedule all day. Yes, what I want. If there's a specific start and end date, if this is for like a limited time product or something like that, I certainly can select that option right here. Campaign URL options. If you are doing any kind of advanced analytics tracking, you actually probably will want to put something in there. If not, you can go ahead and skip this. Devices, ads will show on all computers, mobile phones, tablets, and TV screens. Yes, I do want to keep that right there. No brand lists excluded. So here, exclude brands so your ads won't show on searches that mention those brands. For whatever reason, it's even hard for me to kind of think of an example, but there probably are examples where, you don't want to be showing up with a certain industry or certain other brands. So if that is the case for you, that's 100% fine. Just make sure you input that information right here. Back to more settings, age exclusions. Again, obviously, if you are in a very specific niche, you're selling alcohol, then obviously no one under, at least not in the United States, under the age of 21 should be seeing your ads. So you can't just do like 21 and over, as you can see here. So you would have to exclude 18 to 24, but also that's probably fine. I mean, 22, 23-year-olds aren't super affluent in most cases. So it's probably not the end of the world that if you're selling alcohol, then you exclude them. But again, all of this is on a business, to business case. And so you just want to look through these. I'm just showing you what is actually available for you to select, but I'm going to keep things simple for this example. I'll go ahead and just leave all of these default settings. So the only thing here I've done is select my country, the language, and then telling them that no, I'm not going to be running any kind of EU political ads. Go ahead and click on next. So then here you can go ahead and put in the URL of your websites, and then here Google AI will help you generate assets, which is really nice, very helpful. And then you can also input the services and industries that you are advertising in. Because of my URL and because of the scan that it already did a good job of selecting these. So driving and racing games, simulation games, that's absolutely perfect. But if there's anything else in here, I can try to see if it comes up, but I think that's probably fine. Racing, let me see, video game console. I can probably put that in there as well as something else to put in there. But overall, I think with these things right here, then that works fine. And then what makes your products or services unique? Here's a nice little blurb. It auto-generated this, again, from the URL up here. That is very helpful. So just make sure that that does work for you. Sometimes the AI generation actually will break here. It won't work. And so you do have to do all of this yourself, but it's your business. Hopefully you're able to kind of give some kind of overview as to why your business is unique. So in some cases, you may have to type this out completely manually yourself. And if you don't, just make sure everything that it came up with here does make sense and works for your business. And then select pages to enhance and suggest images from. So this is just to where it's going to grab images. So it's not going to send traffic to these URLs. Some people kind of do assume that. But sure, pull from my website, pull from the social media, the Facebook page, the Instagram page. I am fine with it pulling imagery from all of that stuff. So I'll go ahead and click on generate assets right here. I'll just call this test group 1 because again, this is not actually going to be published. All right, cool. So then listing groups, we need to figure out, okay, what products are we going to be promoting? This is again, more of a strategy question. You can promote all products in a single ad group. Unless you have very few products, I don't really recommend doing that. I think it's having, different asset groups for various products. So again, if you're in the skincare space, maybe one asset group is going to be just for lotions, and then another asset group is going to be for I'm not a skincare expert, so I probably should pick something else, but mascara that's healthy for your skin or whatever it is. So I do think it is better to break these down. But if you're a very simple business, you only have, let's say, 2 to 3 products, then I would say, yeah, go ahead and leave it at all products. But again, if you have more than that and you can break these down into categories, I do think that makes the most sense. But for purposes of simplicity, I will go ahead and leave that right there. Then business name, you can go ahead and update that. If not, hopefully it pulled the right name. Logos, so let me go ahead and click on add logos. I'll just choose one right now, but typically I do like selecting multiple variations of a single logo. Awesome. Save. Again, you can choose up to 5 designs of your logo, and I do recommend doing that because, again, with a PMAX campaign, your ads are going to be appearing in so many places, right? YouTube, Gmail, display, search, shopping, all that kind of stuff. So all those placements, they're going to the shape and size and look of the logo, it's going to look better in some places versus others. So if you give it 5 different options, it'll find that best option and utilize that for you. It does have some suggested logos here as well. So sure, I'll go ahead, again, assuming these do work, you can go ahead and select them. If they don't work, then don't select them, but it will generate those options for you. Then I click on main colors right here. If I want to give it some additional guidance in terms of the assets that it's generating for me, I can do that right here. So here's the, the font code for my main color and my accent color and all this kind of stuff. I'm not doing that. I'm already happy with the suggestions that it's giving me. But again, if you need to give it a little bit more guidance, you can go ahead and do that right here. And then here you put in the final URL that you want to be sending traffic to. So regardless of the destination, whether it's search, display, YouTube, Discover, Gmail, whatever it is, this is where they're all going to eventually lead to. So make sure you are selecting the appropriate URL right there. If you're a local business and you take calls, then this probably is a good option for you to include the calls one, and you can go ahead and add your phone number. For this campaign, that's not going to be the case, but again, I just want to point that out for you. So then here are your headlines. It does come up with some sample headlines. I'm just going to go ahead and keep these right here. In most cases, I actually would modify these at least a little bit, if not a lot. But again, this is just for purposes of simplicity, and you have up to 30 characters for each and every single one of these headlines, and you need a minimum of 3, as you can go ahead and see right there. And then my long headlines, again, it has auto-generated some. I can keep these, I can discard them, create my own, whatever it is. Again, in this example, I'm just keeping things very, very simple. Just make sure you're not automatically accepting everything that it gives you. Some of these things are going to end up being a little bit lousy. So just be very careful not to do what I'm doing here exactly, where I'm just kind of going yes, yes, yes to everything. Make sure it's something that's going to work for you. And if you wanted to add more long headlines, you can click on this plus button, or if you wanted to generate more long headlines for you, just go ahead and click on this generate long headlines button. And then lastly, in terms of the text-based areas, we have our descriptions right here. Again, these are all auto-generated. Normally I would go in here, refine these, completely remove them, add my own, but again, for purpose of simplicity, I'll just go ahead and keep that as it is. And then images. So you can manually add images that are already in your account, or you can have it generate images for you. So just for fun, let me go ahead and select that option right there. And so here is their image generation tool. And so here are some generated images that are already created for me. So again, I'm not saying I would use all of these in an actual real scenario, but let's just pretend that I'm happy with all of them. So sure, let's go ahead and select. So you can choose 20 images, up to 20 images to use in your ad. If you want to use less than that, that's perfectly fine. Sorry, I forgot to hit save right here. So actually I want to click save down here. So I have 12 images, right? I could add 8 more if I wanted to, but I'll keep it simple and just stick with those 8 right there. So then videos, right? So videos will be important because videos will appear obviously in YouTube, but they can appear also in some display placements as well. So I already have some that are pre-uploaded here. However, if this is the first time you're doing this, you've never created a PMAX campaign, you may need to search your YouTube channel if there's a video on your channel that you want to be using, or you can upload as well. But I'll just pull from the asset library. I'll just choose one right here. Again, this is just a sample campaign. I'm not actually going to be publishing this. And then site links. So site links are a big yes. You definitely always want to be including site links. They're going to make particularly your search campaigns look a lot better, but they also will appear for your YouTube campaigns, and I believe also for Gmail as well, but don't 100% quote me on that. But the most important thing is that they're showing up for search. So I already have them pre-populated from my account. These are account-wide site links, but you can manually add more or modify them. I could come in here and edit this one, change the URL that it's ultimately going to if I wanted to, but it's actually already going to where I want it to go. And then call to action. I don't like choosing automated. At the end of the day, this is a sales campaign, so I am going to choose shop now. For all these other call to actions, I probably wouldn't be selecting them because I don't think PMax is going to work for, something where it's just learn more or sign up or contact us. That's all like really lead generation based. I went into detail as to why PMax is not good for lead generation. So really, realistically, shop now should kind of be the only call to action that you use on this. So we're going to go ahead and click on more assets. If I'm running a specific promotion, if I want to show prices, if I want them to be able to send a message, I can do that as well. Structured snippets are pretty good too. Let me actually do that. Structured snippets are always good. I have a pre-created structured snippets right there. It's hard to say that quickly, structured snippets. But of course, you can create them from scratch right here. Structured snippets are just pieces of text that kind of highlight what you have. So in this case, the wheelbase, pedals, bundles, all that kind of stuff. So again, back to the skincare example right here, you can put lotions, mascara, whatever it might be. That way when people see your ad, they can immediately know what it is that your business sells. I'm just going to choose my pre-populated one. Lead forms, skip that because again, we don't do lead generation for PMax, or at least I highly advise against that. And then lastly, callouts. I'm using account level callouts right here, but these are kind of just additional things you perhaps could not fit into any of your text options, such as your headlines, long headlines, descriptions. So here, right, we say, hey, there's multiple payment options available. You can sign up for offers, all that kind of stuff. So just any kind of additional incentive that maybe wasn't super important to put into any of the text previously, but it's still nice to know. So you can go ahead and do that. Again, I'm using account level, but I can create some brand new ones right here from scratch. Right, or here are, I also have some pre-populated ones. Fast shipping, right? That's a really important one as well. Or I can just add a new call out right here, and I put in my text like, best quality, if that's something that I think would benefit being in the ads. But I'll just go ahead and stick with those, and then we are off to the races. Locations, sure, you can use my account level location. This is really more important for a local business. This business right here, they do have a local aspect it's only like a fraction of their sales, so it doesn't really matter one way or the other. If you're strictly online, just leave that blank and don't even worry about it. Then the display path, I do like this, right? Especially for search campaigns. This can help you just say more things. So here I'm going to put, let's just say, steering wheels, because this is, let's just pretend that this is an asset group just for steering wheels. It's not, I selected all products earlier, but just to kind of give you an example of what you can do with this. Or you can, again, try to call out things that maybe couldn't fit in the previous text, right? So if you offer free shipping on everything, right, this could totally just be free and then shipping, something like that, right? So whatever just makes the most sense for you to show for your business, all that kind of stuff. If you have a different URL to send traffic to for your mobile devices, that's where you would input it right here. Again, if you're using any kind of advanced third-party tracking analytics, then you would input that information right here. But if not, you can go ahead and skip that. And then URL rules, specify pages with URLs that contain a certain piece of text. Unless you're doing destinations to multiple URLs, you don't need to do this. So I actually never use it because I like to have my URLs all go to a very specific page. So it's not something that I worry about. All right, now let's talk about asset optimization. So now we just finished with everything, right? Even though I made it simple, I've only got one video. I should add more, right? If I'm doing this properly, I could add more images, which I certainly would recommend doing. I'm showing you kind of just the basic high level. We've added everything. So with these assets right here, we can now officially appear everywhere. We can appear in search, we can appear in display, we can appear in YouTube, all the kind of things. So that's the power of this type of campaign, as opposed to having to create separate campaigns for all those placements that I just mentioned. Now it's just one campaign and all the assets have been fed here. Now I can appear everywhere across the Google network. Real quick before we go any further, if you are in need of ads help and you have no idea what you're doing, you're looking at this and it just seems like something out of a sci-fi movie and you just don't understand it, well, guess what? You are in luck. My team and I, we can take that off of your plate and manage your ads in a world-class manner. So if that is something that you might be interested in, I have a link below that you can go ahead and check out. Whether you're a small business on a small budget or a large business on a large budget, we have options for everyone at every stage of their business journey. So again, I have that in the description below. Go ahead and check it out. All right, so the next section is asset optimization. So I can here and do customization and final URL expansion turned on. So customization, use text from your site, landing pages, and provided assets to create customized ad copy. So here you're letting Google do a lot of just random text generation for you. I'm not really a fan of that. It does make me a little bit nervous. I just fed it a whole bunch of options in the previous phase. I should be happy with that. If there's something missing, that's ultimately kind of on me. So I actually like to uncheck this right here. And then that automatically unchecks the final URL expansion, but let's go ahead and read about that. Anyway, if you choose to subdivide inventory in the next step, final URL expansion will only send traffic to landing pages related to the campaign's product inventory. So again, in my case, I do like the asset groups to go to one URL, not multiple URLs. It can get a little bit confusing when you do it that way. So unless you're sending to multiple URLs, again, you can go ahead and skip that right there. Image. So enhancements, enhance and adjust images for better appearance, formatting, and layout. Sure, you can go ahead and keep that. You know, this is one of those things that I don't think is going to really move the needle one way or the other. What it's talking about right here is, you know, so if someone's browsing through their phone late at night and it's dark, you know, then it'll kind of like tone down the appearance of the image. It'll make it a little bit easier on the eyes, whereas if they're viewing it during the day, it'll brighten that image out for you. So it's like small things like that, which I'm fine with. And then landing pages, get images from your landing page to use in your ads. So if you're still not 100% satisfied with all the images that you got right here and you do like the images that you have on your landing page, sure, go ahead and leave that on, you know, or you turn it off, right? Just it's a really case-by-case decision on how satisfied you are with what you've already provided and what's on your website. And then enhancement, allow Google to enhance your uploaded videos by creating additional vertical and square versions as well as shorter versions. So I do like this. Here's an example, right? So if you have a vertical video, here's what it's going to look like on mobile. It's not going to occupy a lot of real estate. It might look a little bit tacky, not that great, but it can create a vertical version. Now, obviously, when it creates the vertical version, it's going to cut things off, but they do a pretty decent job of making sure that where it's focused on, you know, for that vertical version is the most important thing in the video. I'm not going to say that they're perfect, but they do overall do a pretty decent job. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that selected. All right, so signals. Now we're actually getting into the targeting of everything. So it's taken a while, but there are a lot of steps here. But again, the nice thing is that once you're done with this, you're kind of done from a campaign creation standpoint. So signals provide valuable information about the people you want to reach. They help guide who sees your ads on Google Search, YouTube, and more. So what are some words or phrases people use when searching for your products and services? So here, I would put in as many keywords as you can think of, right? So it's up to 50. If you can't get to 50, that's totally fine. But you just want to like keyword stuff right here. The more data, the more information that you give it, the better job it's going to do in terms of getting in front of the right people for you. So I'm just doing one here. Again, this is just an example. I would not launch my campaign this way. I would add, you know, really bare minimum 10, but if I can get to 25, 30, 40, certainly 50, you know, I do like doing that as much as possible. All right, so that's keyword data it's going to feed off of. Now it can feed off of also audience signals. So reach the right customers faster across Google with an audience signal. So if I go over here, I can add my own data. So here is a customer list that I've already uploaded this, and so I can go ahead and select that. I definitely should select that. If you do have a customer list, this is super important. I would highly encourage you to do this. This is perhaps the most important part of all the targeting, because what it's going to do is that not only is it going to get back in front of your previous customers, which obviously if you're in a business such as skincare where you do have repeat business, it'll help get in front of those high value people that have already enjoyed your products, but also it's going to look at this information and find similar people to that. So it's just a very easy way to do some automated targeting without you trying to have to figure out, okay, like, what interest over here, over there, what in-market, theme, which we'll look at in just a second, should I be selecting? It's just a very fast-tracked way. If you have customers, upload that list and use it right here in your targeting. Then we'll click on additional signals. So here we have just kind of like higher level stuff, interest and detailed targeting and demographics. So here you can add in-market segments, life events, and more. Obviously, if you're in the wedding business, there's something you sell that makes sense for people at that stage of your life. That's something you could select. Birthdays as well, or in-market. I do really like in-market segments because what that means is that they are literally in the market for your exact product or service. So obviously, Google tracks us across everything, our searches, our consumption behavior on YouTube, Gmail, all that kind of stuff. So it knows by default like what it is that we are in the market for. And so obviously you can go through here. I'll select the ones that are relevant to this client here specifically, but there's tons and tons of options. You can just click on the browse button and you'll see what is available right here: apparel and accessories, beauty and personal care, dating services, auto and vehicles, event tickets. There's tons and tons of stuff. If you don't want to bore yourself going through this exhaustive list, you can just search. And let's just say if let's see, let me type in wedding. So yeah, wedding planning products and services in market, wedding products and services in market, wedding day planners in market, right? So there's lots of stuff here. I can just type in the search and just see if it comes up. That's probably a faster way of going about it. And then if I go back to browse, I can also check out the life events, the detailed demographics, parental status, marital status, of all those things, matter for the type of product or service that you are selling. And then there's also affinity audiences as well. I'm not a huge fan of these simply because, let's say beauty and wellness, that's something that, this person would be into. It doesn't mean that they want to buy something in the beauty and wellness space, right? I'm into the outdoors myself. I'm not constantly looking to buy a new piece of gear. As much as I maybe would love to, that would be a huge waste of money. And so, at this point, especially because I've bought so much gear over the years, it's actually pretty rare that I buy something new. And so even though if you're targeting outdoor enthusiasts such as myself, it may not make sense to get in front of me because I'm just not in the need of something. So, I would say proceed with caution with affinity audiences. I don't think they're the best, but if you feel very strongly about any of them, give it a little try. And then lastly, demographics right here: male, female, age range, all that kind of stuff. You can modify that based upon your business and what makes the most sense. And then if this is an audience that you feel you're going to for sure use over and over again at some point in the future, then give it a name right here and you can go forward. Obviously, I probably wouldn't recommend doing that until you've tested this audience and that it makes sense, right? So again, just to kind of recap, we've combined keywords, we've combined customer data, and we've combined affinity and in-market audiences right here. And then demographics, I didn't make any changes, but you could make changes to demographics. So it's going to take all that information we just fed it, and it's going to use that to go out to all of the placements inside of Google to hopefully get you some good results. So I go ahead and click next right here. Here we set our budget, all this kind of stuff. Sure, it's telling me 156 per day. Usually I set my own budget, but again, this is just a simple example. Then I click on next. And so here, finally, I get to review everything that I've put together so far for this campaign, verify it's the way I want it to be. And then if I'm happy with everything, I can go ahead and click on publish campaign. So I'm not going to do that because again, this is just a test campaign. This is just for tutorial purposes for your education, but I do encourage you to go over this with a fine comb. It's very easy to miss something along the way because there's so much stuff to look at and select when it comes to a Performance Max campaign. So just make sure that you are aware of what it is that you have published before it actually goes live. Whew. All right, there we have it. We have gone through the tutorial on how to launch a Performance Max campaign. It's long, it's very tedious, but again, if you can get this Performance Max campaign to work well for you, it might be the only campaign you have to create ever again, right? You could potentially be, I'm not making any promises, but you could potentially be hands-off moving forward. So that's it for this part. There is a part 3 coming up inside of Performance Max, and there we're going to talk about how to analyze a Performance Max campaign once it is live. You know, where are your impressions going? What changes should you make? All that kind of good stuff. That will be in the third and final part of this series on Google Performance Max. I hope you found this one to be helpful and educational. As always, with any of my videos, if you have any questions, just let me know in the comments below and I will be happy to answer them. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you next time.